Hey. Hey, that kind of looks like doo-doo.
Yeah, shut up. I know it looks like crap.
Hey, man, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just trying to help.
Help how, exactly? By telling me I suck?
Yep.
Hey there, friends. Today's video was supposed to be on an entirely different topic. But as I was painting this cute little pack snail, I had a problem. I thought my painting looked like garbage, and I am a terrible, terrible painter. So instead, I decided today we're going to see if we can pull this snail out of its turd-covered nosedive and talk about what we do when we feel like our paint job just kind of sucks. And before we dig right into the what and the how of our craptastic predicament, I want to spend a minute talking about the why we sometimes think our paint jobs stink. Human beings are good at a lot of things. We're good at critical thinking, we're good at problem solving, we're good at using and inventing new tools, and we're also really good at looking at something negatively, no matter what it is. There's a lot of research out there in the factors that lead into this negative thinking mindset. And some of them are as simple as evolutionary.
Me no know this berry. It might be poisonous. It make me dead.
But don't worry, we won't deep dive into that. It's important that we recognize that this feeling of my paint job sucks is natural. Almost any painter you look up to occasionally has that same gut feeling of, ugh, this looks terrible. And if they don't, they're a narcissistic prick. I wasn't far into painting this snail before I really hated my work. The dark purple back was highlighted in an odd way, and I struggled with working with the odd bumpy texture. I decided that I was going to try to make the purple look better by contrasting it with a really pale skin tone, almost humanish skin. The problem with that is working up skin tone can take quite a few layers to get to look right. And that whole time, I just kept thinking to myself, if this still looks bad, I'm wasting all this time and I have to repaint the whole thing over. The good news is, you actually thinking your paint job looks like shite isn't a bad thing. Now hear me out. If you think your paint job looks terrible, it's because you care. It's because you have passion for the hobby and you want to improve and you want your paint jobs to look good. If you didn't care, you just simply wouldn't think your stuff looks bad and you wouldn't really want to try to get better, which leads to actually getting better. Today's sponsor and the creator of this cute little pack snail is none other than Cobramode Miniatures. Cobramode strives to create unique miniatures, and they really care about how the clothing, weapons, and pose all tell the story of the character. Each sculpt is unique, so each model has its own personality, even when it's part of a larger line within the same species. The attention to detail in the models is impressive, and it almost felt like I was discovering Easter eggs in a video game while I was painting this pack snail. Turning it around, I kept uncovering cool little details in the sculpt. All the models come pre-supported and include D&D 5e stats, backstories and lore, and access to their Discord where you can speak with the artist and sculptor and get support for any 3D printing questions you might have. Cobramode's models are available both through their Patreon as well as through their My Mini Factory website. Both are linked below. Thank you, Cobramode Miniatures, for your support. Let's get back to the video. All right, let's get down to brass tacks here. How do we go about unsuckifying our paint job? Well, two things. First, don't think about it as a sucky paint job. Think about it as a paint job that's not quite good yet, and that it can get there because it can. And next, try to vocalize what you see in your paint job that you don't like. Are the colors just clashing and not looking well? Is it not smoothly blended where you want it to be? Are the colors not as bright in their brightest points or dark in their darkest points? Or maybe it just isn't clean and you need to go through and tidy it up. For example, when painting the pale skin of the slug, I didn't like the skin because it looked like there was a lack of depth of color. It just looked like various shades of pink, which is not what skin looks like. So I glazed in some magenta and some desaturated blue into the skin, and the slug started to feel more alive. And don't worry about feeling that each section of the model needs to get to 100% complete before you move on to the next section. I find that oftentimes how I feel about a part of the model will change drastically once I get more parts painted. How the colors interact, how it just looks better when the whole model has color on it can go a long ways. So I decided to move on to another part of the model. In this case, I worked on the shell of the snail and tried not to look at the stuff I was unhappy with. For some reason, I decided to paint it a really vibrant green, almost into a lime green at the highlights. Now, I don't think the green looks bad necessarily, and I kind of like the idea of a really vibrant, fantastical looking giant pack snail, but when I look at the model, I already have so many vibrant colors all over it. I've got the really vibrant green and yellow, I've got purple, I've got pink, and I'm worried that if I keep adding colors at this rate, I'm just gonna have a ridiculous looking model. Which brings me to our next tip on fixing your suck. And that is to not worry about everything all at once. If you start thinking about every possible thing that could go wrong or every possible thing you need to paint and you're not sure how for a given model, you're gonna get overwhelmed. And if you get overwhelmed, you're gonna get frustrated. So what you need to do is just find one thing, the next thing you wanna paint, and just worry about that. And I had to take my own advice at this point because I was feeling utterly overwhelmed by all the stuff this snail is carrying. Now, to say that this thing was exquisitely modeled with tons of little details is an understatement, and it's awesome when it's all done. But in the moment, I was just like, there's no way I'm gonna find how to paint all this stuff and not make it look ridiculous. So I took a two-part approach for how I was gonna focus in on one thing at a time. First of all, I decided I wanna make some fun contrast on the model. And by that, I mean I'm gonna contrast the really bright, vibrant, fantastical colors on the snail and its shell and make those contrast with the really kind of dull and muted and natural tones on all the stuff on its pack. This way, all the things on the pack look like they come from the real world and we can understand what they look like. And being carried by this crazy colored snail, it makes the snail even bigger focus of our attention. And second, like I said, I'm only focusing on what I'm painting at the time. I'm not worrying what color the cauldron's gonna be, or the big backpack, or the fishing pole, or the sock, or the nest, or the chicken. I'm just worrying about what I'm painting right now. I'll worry about that when I get there. I like to use wet blending when setting up my initial base coats for colors. It gives me a head start on getting my base tone, shadows, and highlights so I can spend my time more on those extra details that quickly get our model out of the "this looks like ass" phase. And oftentimes we zenithal prime our models and then quickly just cover it up with opaque paint. But I like to use that white light from above that we've sprayed down in my wet blending. That will show me where I want to have my recessed darker color and my brighter color and where they should mix together. Another tip, and probably the tip that has helped me the most in fixing my ugly looking models, is to just slow down. Oftentimes our paint job can be fixed with just that, more paint. And I don't mean to strip the model and start over. I mean add more layers, add more contrast, add more highlights, add more colors. That can all be changed if we just slow down and experiment a little bit. And I can hear you saying,
"John, I have a whole army to paint."
or
"John, do you realize how many unpainted models are in my closet right now? I cannot spend 20 hours on each one."
and those are very valid points. But one thing to remember is speed comes with repetition. Over time, we get faster naturally to hit the same scale of quality. But at the beginning, we have to go slow. We have to crawl before we can walk. So the first model that you try this on is going to be much slower than the 5th or the 20th. Same thing with your army. Work out a test model. Really get down the steps you need to do. Write them down. Understand what you do and what you don't do. And then when you get into that full squad of 50 Skaven, you're going to be much faster because you just know your steps and how to achieve them properly. I said earlier to try to make a practice of vocalizing what you're not happy with in a model. And I think that's very, very helpful and a good practice that will take you further the more you paint. But sometimes we just don't know. I mean, that's why we ask others for help and critiques, right? Because we want their opinion. What I like to do, instead of always asking somebody else, and that is helpful, is to do a little Google search myself. I want to find real pictures of this thing I'm painting. Or I'm going to find a great paint job of the same mini, and I want to see what makes theirs different from mine. Not to just compare yourself, because that's not always healthy to do, but just say, what about their model I really like that's missing from mine? Doesn't need to be the exact same, but let me try to see if I can improve on that area. The end is in sight for this pack snail, and it feels to be coming together pretty well. But I want to take a quick moment and go over a tip that I like to use when painting non-metallic metal. To me, the main thing that stands out to my eye when looking at something that's made of metal is the drama. The drama of the light, how something can be so bright and so dark in such a short space. In most of our painting, we work from a mid-tone and then down to a shadow and then up to a highlight. But with metals, it's like dark, 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 bright, right next to each other. And so what I try to do is keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to put really darks next to really brights, and it'll end up looking pretty good. So as the model is complete and attached to its base, I gotta say I don't hate it like I did in the first couple hours of painting. And so I guess there's another lesson to be learned there. Just because a paint job looks like crap at the beginning doesn't mean it's gonna look like crap in the end. Now, could I spend more time in it and do things differently or add more tweaks? I certainly could. But there's something to be said about a completed model and the satisfaction you get. Remember, I've got a whole nother closet filled to the rim with gray plastic over there. So I need to put this one down and get back on my quest to slay the gray. I hope this video helped you in those times when you're feeling like your paint job just sucks. Now, if you like the channel and want to support it, there's a number of ways you can do so. You can subscribe if you haven't. You can check out my Patreon in the links below and see what fun rewards you get for joining, or you could buy a shirt. Note that I don't think your paint job sucks. I think you're swell, and I'll see you soon.
I'll eat the core. I'm hardcore. I'm parkour. I'm molten core. I'm karate kid. Ain't no more cores. I'm quad core. Know that? Know what I'm saying?